There was no youth justice system. Youth were criminalized and incarcerated with adults and in the adult system. That Cuyahoga County was the second county to implement a youth justice system. Youth as young as 10 years old can be incarcerated in Ohio. But here at the ACLU, we try to push for and support initiatives that keep youth out of these deep end systems and get them the services and education and all those things they need and frankly like are asking for. They do see themselves as squarely members of their communities as they are, and want to get job training and educational experiences and financial literacy and all of these programs and pieces and parts for when they leave the system to be full total members of their community again. We also want to support like diversion away from even stepping foot in those facilities. So like youth, when they first come into contact with the youth justice system at all, getting them immediately into community services and supports rather than having to incarcerate them at all.
Hey everyone, Colin here, back again with another segment of our Court of Public Opinion video series talking about smart justice. Today we're going to be talking about youth justice initiatives and why they're so important for changing course and developing a new framework for how we treat public safety. Today we have Pat Glaydura, a policy strategist with the ACLU of Ohio, based in Cleveland. Now Pat, I know you've been very involved in our youth justice work. The ACLU of Ohio has had a legacy of working with kids who have been incarcerated. Can you talk first about just how does youth justice kind of fit into our smart justice framework in general?
Yeah, I think so much of our smart justice work has to do with reducing our prison population here in Ohio, the decriminalization of poverty work that we do. And I think all of that squarely fits into our youth justice work as well, with a little bit of a twist and a different approach as well. So the youth justice system nationally, but in Ohio, we were actually the second youth justice system in the country. There was no youth justice system. Youth were criminalized and incarcerated with adults and in the adult system. And in Chicago, in Cook County, they decided this should not look like this. So youth are different than adults in the way they should be rehabilitated and treated in the system should be different. And after Cook County, Illinois, decided to do that, Cuyahoga County was the second county to implement a youth justice system. And from there, Ohio built out a youth justice system as it spread nationally. But after that original investment, that original push for a different system, we've seen a backslide into punitive and harsh measures that don't support youth's growth and change.
So when we talk about youth, who are we talking about? Are we talking about 18-year-olds? Are we talking, 10-year? How old are these kids that we're typically talking about here?
Yeah, so unfortunately, and we would like to see this change, but youth as young as 10 years old can be incarcerated in Ohio, and you can stay within the youth in the youth incarceration system. The Department of Youth Services runs that in Ohio until you are 21.
So not even when you're a minor, you can stay in when you're actually 21.
If you have a sentence that starts, say, when you're 17 and does not require an adult transfer, you can stay in the youth system as long as you are 21.
Well, it's interesting that we hear, the goal of youth justice from a state perspective is rehabilitation. It's it's focusing on assumedly making sure that these kids like course correct and become like productive members. But that's not really what we've seen from like a policy standpoint.
No, unfortunately, even though we were the second state to implement a youth justice system, we do not live up to that legacy. We have a system that is punitive and carceral and does not center rehabilitation or diversion in what we do. And we see a lot of legislation that tries to move towards those ends. But here at the ACLU, we try to push for and support initiatives that keep youth out of these deep end systems and get them the services and education and all those things they need. And frankly like are asking for in a lot of cases, to be, members of their community in the ways that they see themselves.
That's so interesting that you say they ask for it, because, whenever we're in the legislature or we're talking with like local jurisdictions, we always talk about like an abstraction about like kids and like youth justice, but like you have actually sat down and had face-to-face exchanges and talked with these kids in Cuyahoga County. So we're hearing like from actually their voice, their perspective. Can you share like what are some, observations you've seen? What are the things that have stood out to you when you're actually in there talking with these kids?
Yeah, so we have talked to youth in Cuyahoga County and around the state who are just as involved in a bunch of different sort of ways and avenues. So we've done like focus groups and listening sessions, which are a little bit more like conversational than like a typical focus group. And we've also like been in these facilities and like asked youth questions about their experience and what they're going through. And really, a lot of the time, they do see themselves as squarely members of their communities as they are, and want to get job training and educational experiences and financial literacy and all of these programs and pieces and parts for when they leave the system to be full, total members of their community again, and really just desire that while they're in these deep end systems and before they get there.
So how do we understand, or what should we take away about how kids got there in the first place? Because I think that's like the real goal is to, obviously when kids are in there and they have been incarcerated, we want to put them on a pathway to a successful life in the future. One of the best ways though is preventing them from being there in the first place. Right. So like, what do kids say like about how they got to where they were? Like what are some like, lifestyle or environmental factors that play into this?
I think this goes back to our decriminalization of poverty work, that so much of what the youth speak to in their experience is dealing with structural and personal poverty in their communities, in their home lives, and having to navigate that. So like needing ways to make money, needing ways to support themselves in environments that are not maybe so supportive towards them. And then also they talk about like being around and being in these environments where folks are not believing in them, where they're not being supported by like the school system or the public safety, like our police officers are targeting them, or they're not feeling like that communal relationship with these public safety figures, and that their kind of lives are being overseen in a way that they don't feel is so conducive to their success.
So there's been a lot of talk in Ohio and in Cuyahoga County recently about like reshaping the youth justice system, new facilities, different like models of like, not everybody in like such a small number of largely populated institutions, going into a more like neighborhood centric approach. Can you talk about what we're seeing there about kind of this smaller is safer framework and like how that could promote public safety, but also realize that kids need to be treated as kids and not, criminals?
Yeah, so in 2024, Governor DeWine convened a working group to like reshape or see our youth justice system in a different light. And one of the biggest things that came out of that was this idea of smaller is safer, which is backed by evidence, where if youth are in smaller facilities with a smaller staff to youth ratio, more support services closer to their families, like if
somebody doesn't have to like drive 3 hours to go see their son or daughter.
Exactly.
It can be more regular contact, more connection to home.
Right. They can get visits from their parents or their grandparents or like people in their community, and then the supports that they're receiving, like if they're getting this outside program within the facility, they can step out of the facility and re-engage with those same people because they're living in the same community.
Yeah.
And so those things we see as a real.
And that's backed by evidence. That's
Yeah.
like not just bullshit. Like that's
Yeah.
actual data.
Yeah, and
Suggests that
this is
works.
what the working group came to, and it was a group of people from a bunch of different walks in the youth justice space that put this group together, and we're hoping to see those changes like really come to fruition, and get these smaller and more community based facilities, and then on top of that. Those are for our youth who are in more deep end systems.
Mm-hmm.
We also want to support like diversion away from even stepping foot in those facilities. So
Yeah.
like youth, when they first come into contact with the youth justice system at all, getting them immediately into community services and supports rather than having to incarcerate them at all.
What do those like supports and services look like? You know, and instead of like again an abstraction, like what is it? Is it after school programming? Is it sports? Is it library access? What does that programming look like?
It is all of those things, and it is an investment in these youth communities. Mm-hmm. So it is these direct signed up for services where youth go to mental health counseling or do some sort of like job training that has like a social emotional aspect to it. But it is also investing in what their community has to offer, mm-hmm. and building those support services that they can engage in outside of those things. So like sports teams and music clubs, mm-hmm. and all of those sorts of things, creative endeavors.
Yeah.
Making sure our libraries feel like spaces that youth want to go to, mm-hmm. Making our rec centers places where youth can convene and be together and not be over-policed for gathering in a public space where they are allowed to be.
So one last question, and then I'll let you go. You have used the word invest several times, mm-hmm. in this conversation. Mm-hmm. How is youth justice initiatives an investment? Why do you frame it? Why should we frame it as an investment rather than a system or, you know, a punitive, you know, mm-hmm. thing that we would, like adult jail is, you know?
Yeah. Well, first we know that youth, it's cliche, but it is the truth that the youth are the future. Mm-hmm. And if we invest in them, the future is brighter, and all of that is true. But it is also the framing that we got from the governor's working group. It is an investment. It is an investment in changing the system. Yeah. And
investment takes dollars. It takes a little bit of, you know, time. Belief and time. Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All righty, Pat. Well, thank you very much. Great stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the ACLU of Ohio's YouTube channel to stay up to date on our latest video drops. Pat, thank you.
Thank you.